Oh,
All right, so let me start. Greetings, this is Jim Winship, and I'm very much looking forward to doing this webinar, When Clients Get Stuck, Approaches to Moving Toward Goal Completion and Case Management. I've taught social work for a long period of time, and one of the gripes that I have is the way that social work education is done, when you get to the point of teaching students about practice itself, working with clients or participants in a case management situation, is that there's a lot of emphasis on the assessment/understanding phase, and then working with goals and goal setting, and then toward termination. And there's very little in that really hard work of what do you do in helping clients reach those goals, and especially when they get stuck, because people get stuck, right? The analogy of driving a car and you're in the mud and you think you could do it, and you try something and that doesn't work, and then you try something else and that doesn't work, and something else, and maybe that works and maybe it doesn't. So what we're going to do in this webinar is we're going to look at some of the reasons why individuals have trouble while they're working on meeting their goals. We're going to look at some warning signs that clients are getting stuck, that they're losing momentum, that they're slowing down in terms of the time and effort and energy that they're putting towards that, and some strategies for both reducing the odds that clients will get stuck and then to help them move forward when they do get stuck. So that's what we're going to do. And we're really doing this based on the premise that the case manager or the person who's working with the client has really been in a goal-setting mode where people have set SMART goals, right? That are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. That these are goals that could be accomplished or have some likelihood of being accomplished. So first, we'll start off with some of the reasons that clients get stuck. One of those is that the easier goals have already been met. It's the low-hanging fruit. I know in the case of people in transitional housing, coming in, you come in trying to set goals, and there's some things that people can do initially that would make a lot of difference to make sure that they're signed up for all available services. Perhaps getting a driver's license back if it's only a small fine or something needs to be paid, etc. And so there's a tendency for all of us to do the easy stuff first, and then what they're doing is the harder stuff. It could be the progress is not apparent because for that person it doesn't feel like they're getting anywhere. They may be getting someplace. Think of the analogy of seeing young nieces and nephews that you haven't seen for a while. You know, and it's been 3 months or it's been 6 months, and suddenly that 4 or 7-year-old is a lot taller than he or she was before. But from the parent's point of view, they may say, oh yeah, I guess so, because they see the child every day. Well, the client, the participant, sees herself or himself every day and may not notice cases where real progress is being made. And the fact that the work is just hard. You know, it's hard, and sometimes it yields results and sometimes it doesn't. And for people whose lives are already busy, then trying to do one more thing or 2 more things to move forward, it's just not easy. And that's the reason why people get stuck. And along with it, there's no guarantees of success, right? Someone is trying to work to get a better job. There is a great new documentary by Chris Rock on Netflix, and one of the things he said is, stop telling kids they can be anything you want. It's just not true. You can do things that you're good at as long as there are jobs available, And then he adds, and it also really helps to know somebody. But in all of the work that people are doing, there really are no guarantees that it's going to pay off. And people get stuck if they feel like, why am I doing all this? It's, nothing's really going to happen. And with that, they may have difficulty seeing how things can be different and better. This is they're kind of living in a situation where they've been kind of slogging and stuck for a while, and they're really, in that sense of, is this going to make any difference? Am I just going to wait for the other shoe to fall? And that's a real impediment to working on stuff. It can also be that there's just too many goals, right? Trying to do too many things at the same time, and really not focusing on perhaps what's the most important thing to put one's time and their energy. So I'm throwing a bunch of different reasons, and in many cases there may be combinations of those. The next reason for that is, and I got this from a caseworker in Minneapolis in a workshop that I was doing in the fall of 2017. And she just said, some of my clients are comfortable in chaos. The advantage of chaos, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent bill this month. Oh God, I had a great time last night. I need to get everything going. Kids are going everywhere. That sense of chaos, it's adrenaline producing, and people kind of get used to doing that. And that can be another reason why people get stuck. And also just life happens. People are moving forward, things are going, and then just something happens. A child gets sick and you need to take off time from work, or a parent is having difficulties, and that takes all your time and your energy, and it's just not possible to work on stuff for yourself. And that's a reality. And another thing is that the person may be perceived, may come across as being stuck, because it may be that they've done enough work. They may be good enough for now. The workers in Pathway of Hope experience that, as some families have made some progress and they're moving toward, quote, graduation in Pathway program, and they just kind of stop. And it could be that at this point in time, what they've done is sufficient. And so they just don't want to do any more. And the final thing that I'll throw out with this is that one of the things with working toward goals is that the reality is that maintaining goals can be difficult while you're working on other goals or newer goals. I use that analogy of Jenga, right? Is that it's there, and if one of the other things that has been accomplished suddenly isn't working anymore or isn't available, then that can take away time and energy, and the person might not be moving forward, might be stuck. So what I presented was 10 different reasons why people may get stuck. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop here and ask participants, ask you guys to write in the text box, and Rachel will read them off. What are some other reasons that you've encountered why clients who have been moving forward on goals stop, why they get stuck?
All right, we've got a couple. Feel free to continue to type in if you're still thinking. The first one is they are afraid of success. Next one is that they're discouraged. One states that they're not, like the goal wasn't centered around them. It was maybe more of a case manager goal. Mental health concerns, the awareness that maybe they have that change is painful or scary, it's unknown. And then one person uses housing particularly, and they say they feel like they've seen it all or they've gone through all the processes.
Yeah, those are all really good. I think one of the and we'll really come back to that one about not their goal a little bit. The one about scary is really good. I did not think about that as I was putting that together, and so I think I will try to come back to that to add that in, or some as we go through that. And I think the afraid of success is real, and I think there are many. So why don't I touch on that again as we get to the what can you do part of it. Anything else, Rachel?
That's it for now.
Okay, so moving on to then just looking at warning signs, because I think it's important to not get surprised. I mean, sometimes you can be surprised that just suddenly it seems like everything is going great and suddenly the person just stops. But I think often there are warning signs that there is diminished interest, diminished effort, etc. So that includes missing meetings, right? Especially without the notice of not showing up, right? You assume that you're going to meet that person in the office or someplace else, and they're just not there. There's less energy devoted to the work. If the case manager is essentially given homework, tasks that would be done by the next time you meet, and those had been done in the past, and suddenly they're not, then that's another case that the person's feeling stuck. And less change talk and more sustaining talk. And this is from motivational interviewing. And there are many things from motivational interviewing that I think can really be applied well to case managers. And this is what the developers of motivational interviewing said. You just listen to the person talking. And change talk is things like, I really want things to be different in my life. I'm looking forward to the time when I don't have to be worried all the time about making the rent. Sustaining talk is the ones that kind of, using that term, that just kind of sustain or affirm the present situation. It's just an awful lot of work, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Right? And this may be some of the same thing that was voiced by one of the people who wrote in terms of the last what else, but where you're just kind of looking at that signs of inertia or negativity in the way people are talking about their life, and that can be a warning sign. So real briefly, what are the other warning signs that you see? So we'll stop and give people a chance to write that in.
All right, so the first few are giving a lot of excuses. Another is stating what they believe the caseworker wants to hear versus maybe what's actually truth. Signs of a substance abuse concern. Asking more about the case manager's opinion or relying on them to make the goals. Fear or anxiety of moving on and the current relationship ending. I'm assuming they mean the case manager relationship, maybe the fear of transitioning away from services. I think that's what they're meaning.
Yeah, I think that the one of those that really stands out to me is saying what they think the case manager wants to hear. You know, that's the person is going through the motions, but there really doesn't. There may not be the kind of ownership, and there may not be the kind of effort that is involved. And certainly, when you look at warning signs, that substance abuse, has to be, there. Just that kind of antenna. Just are there indications that somebody is doing, especially if there is some history of using in the person's background. So I want to then look at reducing the odds that clients will get stuck, right? So both the warning signs is, okay, it may not have really gotten to the point of the person is stopped, so we're knowing something, and then what are the things that we can do that make it less likely that a client, a participant, would get stuck. And these include, one, making sure that the goals and action steps are really well thought out. That the goals aren't too big, that they're SMART goals, that they are measurable, that they're achievable, that they really fit, they're relevant to the person's situation. It's not the caseworker's goals, it's that person's goals. And the more likely, and that the action steps are small pieces that can be achieved, and then once they're achieved, that can give a sense of progress and moving forward. A second thing is the client building in reinforcers for goal progress and goal achievement. I mean, we need reinforcement in our life in order to keep going. I know that, for example, in the work with people who are quitting smoking, and quitting smoking is really hard to do. I mean, I was an expert at quitting smoking before I finally managed to quit some decades ago now. But one of the things that good programs on that is it asks the people, okay, how much money a month are you saving if you're not smoking, if you cut down and then you stop smoking, and you need to treat yourself with some of that money. There needs to be reinforcement in that. If people are doing some things that are difficult, what are the things that they can do that would to where you can feel good about it? So those so the person is reinforcing themselves, and then the case manager, the caseworker, also, how can you reinforce that the client's moving forward? Earlier, I'd said one of the reasons why people get stuck is they feel like there's no progress because it's hard to see. And one advantage of really good case notes is that that you can go back and you can say to a client, okay, a month ago, here's what was going on with you, right? And there was this behavior that was 4 or 5 times a week. When I look at the last couple of times we met, there's only a couple of those, 1 or 2 a week, that are problematic, and you're doing more things that clearly are positive, right? You can see that there is a record. You can see that there is a direction. So if it is data that you can use from self-sufficiency scale or other measures, or just case notes and just reinforcing that yes, there is real progress that is being made. So the warning signs in this one are the short sections, and I'm going to stop again and ask, what else do people do that would reduce the odds that clients would get stuck?
All right, we may have stumped them. Just a couple. First is celebrating small successes to help kind of build momentum. Making sure they're invited to other programs and services. Working with them to remove toxic relationships or get away from toxic relationships. Make sure there is adequate action steps so they can feel that success in completing them. Identifying other resources in the community that could support the family.
Yeah, and some of those are things that I'm going to get at as we look at the thing about what can be done when clients get stuck. But I want to go back to this because the person who talked about celebration, and that's really tied into how the worker can reinforce. And I think that the celebrations are, it can be really important, and also just just the wows and the attaboys. And I am really, really amazed that you were able to do that. One of the things that I found when I was working with men who were this was a group for men who had been arrested for domestic abuse. And it was a really good 15-week, 4-hour-a-week group sessions, and was trying to use the strengths perspective just in terms of telling people when they really were doing something that was much, much better than they had been doing before, when they were really making progress. And my co-worker, who had been doing this work for a long time, said, Jim, many of these people are not used to hearing good things about themselves, to hearing these attaboys. They didn't get it growing up. They don't get it in their workplace. They may not get it in their relationships. And so I think when we can do those affirmations and those celebrations, that can make a difference. So here's some things that can be done when clients get stuck. And the first of these really comes from a case manager in Indiana, who said, often when clients get stuck, it may be that there's something going on with them in their lives that they just have not shared with you that is really getting in the way. It might be substance abuse, it might be mental health issues, it could be anything else. And so from the case manager's perception, it may not be clear why this person is not able to do X and Y, but it could be because there's something we don't know. And so often just asking the kind of question that says, help me understand. Help me understand some of the reasons why you were unable to do that, because I've seen you're being able to do things like that in the past. There may be a deeper understanding of what's going on that is needed than is readily apparent at this time. Another is to look at the barriers and to come up with strategies based on the barriers, because asking that question, what's getting in your way, can yield to really good conversations. Somebody mentioned toxic relationships. That may be one of the barriers. It may be that in order really to do anything, it's going to be necessary to either reduce expenses or get more money coming in. And so how can that happen? And then in order to move forward with whatever the goal was. So a focus on barriers. there's more than one way to think of role models. So someone said, what are the resources in the community? So you can think about that in terms of what are the formal resources, but what are the other informal resources? Who are the people that have had success with doing this that could then be useful? I'm on the board of a small ecumenical transitional housing program in Whitewater, and I do some supervision for the case coordinator. And one of the people that that translates for the case manager when there are Spanish-speaking clients is somebody who had stayed at Bethel House, oh, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. He and his wife are now homeowners. One of the things that that transitional housing program does has a very strong financial awareness, financial literacy component. And this guy is a really big proponent of that, you know, and so essentially he's, you know, his talking about his own experience is probably has more impact than what the case manager says. And so finding people that have been successful in doing that and getting them to share not only their stories, but their strategies, and in some case their support can really be helpful with people. Would go back to change talk that I mentioned earlier. You know, when you hear that change talk, when you hear somebody say, I really need for there to be less stress with me and my children. I really want this to happen. Then to really use that as a moment to say, okay, so what can be done this week? What can be done now? Just in terms of moving. So one thing that that occurs is that when you hear a lot of change talk, when you hear people just being, quote, I'm really excited about doing this, and nothing's happening. The words and the actions don't match. So one is to challenge any discrepancy between expressed values and current behavior. You know, help me understand how doing this gets you closer to your goal, right? Because it doesn't seem to make sense. So you're not criticizing, you're not judging, you're asking that as a very open question. Help me understand. You can challenge discrepancies between a client's version of events and everyone else's, or when important information is left out. And you can think about how that applies to specific clients and situations you've had. Is that, I mean, no one ever tells the complete truth. But if there are huge things that are left out, or things that just don't seem to fit your experience of the person, you know, to challenge this. Again, help me understand. Another one is inertia talk. When someone said, I can't do this, I've never been able to. And one way in which that challenged is just to kind of to restate it, is to say, I have trouble doing this. Now, some things that people can't do, right? I couldn't do brain surgery. You wouldn't want me to do that. I don't have the manual dexterity. But also when someone says, I can't, it's really just, they could say, I have trouble doing this. It is difficult for me. And when you say those, both, it is difficult for me, I have trouble doing it, both of those give the option for something being possible. When you say, I can't, that shuts the door. You can explore consequences of behavior. So if you continue like this, what do you think will happen? And again, you're not judging, you're not blaming, but you're asking a real question and hoping that the answer in the answering of that question, the person may start to think about what really needs to be done. And you can reframe a new positive interpretation of negative information provided by the client. reframing is really powerful. Um, 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 I'm not getting anywhere. Well, you look at what the person's doing, that can be reframed as, it's taking me a long time to get where I want to be. It's the same reality, but it's just thought about a different way. And so often things can be reframed. And when clients say goals are not working, don't argue. Don't argue because arguing never works. And I think one of the things you can do is to go to yes and. Yes, that's the case. It doesn't seem to be working. And it seems to me that it's really important for you to be able to do this. And when unexpected crises occur that get in the way of achieving goals, similar to yes and is both and. How can you deal with a crisis but not give up working on that goal? Perhaps moving a little bit slower, but not abandoning the goal in working with the crisis. When someone mentioned the idea that that success is scary, it's outside somebody's, maybe outside their life experience. They may not know what that's like. And when you notice that, I think then again that some version of help me understand. So I'm picking up from you that it seems like it's really scary. I'm not sure I quite understand what that means. Help me understand what it is about doing this that you think that's causing you some anxiety, that's making it difficult to do this. And on the same and related to that is the not only scared of success, but just scared of what it would be like. What we know from a lot of research that when families have been living in an area with concentrated poverty and they were able to get housing, Section 8 housing or some other kind of housing in a neighborhood that is, quote, better, schools are better, less crime, more middle income people, that generally their kids do well in school. But it's scary, especially if you're moving out of a neighborhood where people have lived for a long period of time. And so just kind of examining what are the pluses and the minuses, pros and the cons of any situation can be useful. And then, as I mentioned before, if just maybe getting to some agreement that this is good enough for now. This is okay. I don't really want to work on anything else right now. Tied in with the good enough for now, and and what may be an undercurrent, what may be there is that there's some shame involved in going to Salvation Army, going in any place and asking for help. And some people don't want to be seen walking in the building. And if things are a little better and the need's not quite so great, well, that may be good enough for now. And just affirming that and just saying, yeah, if you want to work on some of this stuff later, if you'd like to do that, then come on back. And that's okay. So I've mentioned again about 10 things that fit with approaches that can be used when people are stuck. And I'm going to stop and let people write some more, and we'll talk about those.
All right, we've got the first few. First is kind of giving them some time to kind of get unstuck instead of being like in their face. More frequent meetings for particular clients for a short term to help get out of the situation. And then I think this is a question related to good enough right now. You can come back to work on these goals, and they're asking for clarification even after completion of Pathway of Hope.
Right.
Providing some appropriate and fitting motivational quotes for them to take with them.
So let me stop there, and if and just ask the person who wrote that and others, have you found that useful? I mean, have there been situations in which that really helped? Because I'm curious.
We have at least one person who says it's helped if it's relative to their situation.
Okay. I really liked the first two that came in, which really were which seemed related in a way. The one person who said you need more time, and the second who said more frequent meetings, because the first one is okay. Let's extend the time frame a little bit. And if we extend the time frame and with the expectation that there may be less that's being done each week, then that may be very achievable, right? You've essentially reframed it from not getting enough done to getting enough done with fewer expectations. And the other one about more meetings is essentially saying, let's speed it up. Let's try to do more things that then may get progress, may get work done better. And I think both of those are very useful.
We've had a couple other people pop in saying that yes, using things like quotes or Bible verses, affirmations, different things have helped their clients with anxiety or other, sorts of issues during the week or when they're not with their case manager.
Great. Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, I know that sometimes Bible verses can be really useful. Cool. I'm going to go on to the summary, and then after that, there'll be a time again for questions or any other comments people have. So here is a sense of when I try to summarize this issue of what to do with clients getting stuck. First, remember that change is not a linear process. It's not that people go one step, another step, another step, another step. But it may be two steps forward, one step back, or a step forward, a step off to the side in some crazy dance move, and then kind of circling back to where they were before. And I think that's important for the worker, and I think it's important for the client, because expectations of how quickly this can be done and what it's like when there's not forward movement, that unrealistic expectations can get in the way. This ties very much back to the whole stages of change model. Remember that the client or the participant is the one that drives the goals and actions, and our job is to support this, to make sure that the goals are not the workers' goals, and people make decisions in terms of how much they want to do at any point in time, And our job is to support this in as effective and caring a way as we can, to provide the kind of information, help with decision making, connection with resources, and it may be quotes and Bible verses, anything else, affirmations, things that help the person along the way. So this is where I'm going to stop and invite people to ask questions or additional comments.
Sorry. We have one question to start. Are there texts produced by like former clients that might benefit people currently in that position, offering relatable experiences, etc.?
When they say, are there texts? I mean, I think one of the things that relates to this is that I think, one, I know that Salvation Army has some client stories that I've gathered, and right now I can't remember exactly which website I went to that found that. Rachel, are there things for Pathway?
Yeah, I mean, on like a bi-monthly basis, there's usually a Pathway of Hope success story in the Central Connection. I think that's what they're calling it these days. The newsletter, the like glossy one that comes to each location. A lot of the divisional and websites and core websites would have success stories. You could also contact, if you want something bigger than your location, if it's for Pathway of Hope, your regional coordinator or, your officer, other staff at your facility, you can get the releases and get that drafted up, or your development department might have some stuff.
So, and here's something related to that. I did parenting work for a long time, parenting classes, and then what I really liked more were more parenting groups, where it really was more of a discussion format and really participant driven of what they talked about. And in reality, it turned out to be essentially the same thing because the issues that parents face are the same. And I really gathered a lot of stories that I would share. And so it would be, so there was somebody in a group that we had last year who also had a 4-year-old, and sounds like some of the sort of similar issues. And here's what she did. And there were two reasons I did this. One, because I was really unlike the people I was working with. Male, white, older, middle class, etc. And I thought in some ways it was easier for them to connect with the stories of people that were like them. And if the situation seems similar enough, then they are more likely to hear that. So I think that one of the things that, in addition to looking for what are the outside resources, I think that also just, trying to remember those times that you've had when clients have done something in a similar situation that was effective, and then just kind of share that. It was somebody I worked with last year, and then go ahead and share that story, that experience.
All right, another question. How do you decide when it's time to tell a client that a different case manager would be better or more appropriate?
Yeah, I'm laughing first because one, there's not an easy answer for that. But I think it really means that after nothing has happened for a little while, and especially if it looks like the case that that there isn't that kind of good professional relationship. Whatever you've got is not yielding results. And it's, and nobody's happy with that. And I think before anything like that would be done, that certainly needs to be challenged and saying, okay, here's my perception, that my working with you is not really assisting you. What's your take on it? How do you see it? Because I think that certainly is the first the first set of questions that need to be dealt with before any kind of decision about working with somebody else might be a better idea.
All right, next question is, how can I motivate a client who is making progress but continually has, like in quotes, life happen in regards to like scheduling? Are they pushing them too hard as far as the case manager goes?
That's a great question. And I think that a lot of that is just conversations with the clients, and just saying, okay, you're doing really good work and all these things are getting in the way. So what do we do about it? How do we arrange things so that in your turbulent life, you're still able to do a yes and? And I think that that the answer to that really is the conversation, and making sure that the worker is not pushing the client, but at the same time, it's that fine line of, you don't want to just be saying, yes, of course things are so busy you can't get anything done. So it really asking the question, so how are you going to be able to do this? And so to engage that conversation so that it is one that's going to have, that's outcome oriented, where something comes out of it with a strategy for what can be done at this particular point in time. Let me stop for a second. Rachel, was that understandable, what I just said?
I think so.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Just want to make sure.
That's actually all the questions we have so far, and we still have another minute. And the person who asked the question said, yes, it was understandable.
Okay, good.
So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to get those sent in. That might be it for today.
Okay. Well, I just want to say before we quit, I've learned a lot today, and I like those situations where that's happened. Really good ideas, warning signs, approaches. So I'm going to build that in, and I hope that at some point in the future, when I am talking about this with another group, that they will benefit from the good things that you guys have shared. So have a good rest of the week and the weekend. And if you're a basketball fan, may your team do well.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Winship, for your presentation today. Just one last reminder, in case you missed at the beginning, we will send a follow-up email probably by Monday next week. I'm not promising for sure. That will have any handouts from Dr. Winship, the link to the recording, as well as the certificate of attendance. And as you're exiting in the next minute or two, will you please make sure you fill out that survey, particularly question number 1 that asks us for attendance purposes, anyone who watched or participated in the webinar at your computer, so we can make sure we get accurate records. So that's all we have for you guys today, but thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.